Welcome to the Collector's Cast, everybody. I'm your cordial host, Clint the Collector. Here's your other cordial host, Mike Bloski, the most interesting hockey player nobody's ever heard of. How you doing today, Mike?
All right, good.
Look
Excellent.
what's on the table here. Guess
Models.
what we're going to be talking about today.
Models.
Yes, this is our special episode about models, model building, modeling, the whole thing around it. And I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to give a lot of preamble here because we've got a very knowledgeable guest who has lived most of his life as a model builder.
Well, who among us guys did not build at least a few models when they were kids? I built a lot of them. Yeah,
I definitely did. I can't wait to start talking about it because I did lots myself.
Yeah, I'm sure I never built any. I'm sure to the scale or to the
extent
skill that our guest did, but or has or
is.
Don't
build him up too big, or then he's going to look crappy when he gets out here. No, I'm just kidding. We'll be right back with Fire Chief and Model Builder Extraordinaire Bryant Ross. We'll see you right after this. And we're back. It's the Collector's Cast. We've got our guest, just like we promised, Mr. Bryant Ross, all the way from Langley. How are you doing, Bryant?
Well, if I was any better, you'd have to poke me in the eye.
Oh, excellent, excellent. As you know, we're doing an episode today on modeling, model building, modelers, the people who model, not necessarily on a runway, but with glue and
I'm certainly not
paint.
that.
Well, hey, don't sell yourself short. You never know. So here's some of your fine vintage models you brought with you, and that makes my first question go to, when did you start modeling? When did you start building models?
I started building models when I was between 5 and 6 years old.
5 and 6 years old?
Yeah, I'm 61 now, so that would have been, 56 years ago?
Jeez, that young and you were doing it?
Well, yeah, back then.
Well?
Well, no. But it depends on what you consider well. I mean,
we've all been sitting there with like a rim and a propeller and something else stuck to your other fingers as you're trying to glue something.
You see, that's the first question you got to ask yourself when you're building models is, what is building well? Eleanor Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. And if you compare my models, when I finish them, to one of the masters that's out there, like Shepard Payne or somebody like that, it looks like I put them together in the dark with a dull axe.
Wow.
But
I'm just impressed that you know the name of a expert modeler. But there are people
Shepard Payne, Francois Verlinden.
So these are guys that take it serious.
Oh, these are guys that make more than a living at it.
See,
Shepard Payne is dead. Francois Verlinden is probably dead too. But those are two that just sort of pop to mind. There are many out there that are.
Sorry, Mike had a question.
I would build my models like I'd get the model kit, and I was so anxious to build that thing. If it was a car or a helicopter or whatever it was, I'd start building it
in the car on the way home.
Yes, and then you know what? I wouldn't paint the parts.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, now it's all built, but it's not painted.
So now you got to paint it all together.
You got to get your brush around a bunch of parts.
Yeah, and so I never had the patience to say, okay, this part, separate the parts and paint them and do some like pre-assembly, right? Later on in life, when I was an adult and I would build a custom motorcycle, well, then I knew in my mind, well, okay, I have to build this thing first, mock it all up, take it apart,
paint
it, and then build it again, right? So is that what you do?
Which one of those? Put it together first, or what? What I usually do if I'm building a model is I will use a lacquer-based automotive rattle can primer and prime all the parts while they're still on the sprues.
Okay. Yeah.
That makes a little bit extra work because you've got to remove the paint from the gluing surfaces. But at the same time, it will reveal a lot of things like mold lines and the rest of it. So I can take those off when I'm actually in the build process.
Yeah.
And so you can't really mock it up because it glues together.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of test fitting and a lot of messing around with the parts to make sure they're going to fit when you do hit them with the glue.
Yeah.
So some parts will get painted on the trees, on the sprues. Some will get painted once they're on the kit itself. There's a lot of it is what you prefer to do.
Sir, you're saying spurs?
Sprue.
Oh, sprue.
Yeah.
Now, I know the
S-P-R-U-E.
modeling tree is the frame.
Yeah, and
the parts
that's
come
what the
through.
sprue is.
And that's a sprue.
Yeah, in injection molding,
Okay.
that's what the injection molders call it, is the sprue. You'll also see that in metal casting, like in sand casting.
Okay.
The part where they pour in the lead or the aluminum or whatever they're pouring in, the part that actually comes off the piece and goes up the hole that they're pouring in, that's called the sprue.
Whatever they break off
Yeah.
later.
That's called the sprue.
Wow. Now I'm just sitting here thinking about, as you're talking about you were talking about earlier, the guys, the high end guys. Now I would consider myself like a low level modeler. The models I have built as a kid basically follow the instructions, glue them together the way they say, paint them kind of the way they say. I'd muck about a little bit with color schemes, and I do a little bit of minor customization. But now I call the second level guys, the guys that start getting out the razor blade and really customizing things. Were you that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can be. A lot of times, if I just feel like putting a model together, I'll build it straight out of the box. But it'll all be painted, and I'll take off the mold lines. I'll sand down the seams and
See,
stuff
that
like
right
that.
there is a step ahead of me. I just glue them together, and whatever line is there is there.
And the big key to model building, in my view, is what do you enjoy? Because the whole thing is about enjoyment. The whole thing is about relaxation. The whole thing is about finding, building your model. And it goes back to what I said about comparison is the thief of joy. If you start building to impress other modelers, it's a slippery slope. You will cease to enjoy it as much. It's just in the same way as painting in the same way you're an artist, you're a painter. You're
more than a painter.
You're a leather. Okay, but if you were drawing a picture to impress another artist,
you can't do it for that.
Exactly.
You got to do it for
Exactly.
yourself. That will impress people. That level that you take, regardless, because you're doing it for yourself.
If you go to the IPMS, International Plastic Modeler Society contests, and they have one in Richmond every year. In Burnaby every year.
I've been to it.
Yeah. If you go to that, you'll see some unbelievable models. I don't enter them because I don't enter those contests for the simple reason that I'm just not that level.
But I've been to your house, and you've got a lot of models.
I do have a lot of models, and
so you're obviously passionate about it, and you're obviously somewhat of an aficionado.
I'd just say I'm more obsessed than most.
Obsession. We know something about that.
When I went to this show with a guy who's very close and dear to me, and Frank actually he built a Formula One model to put in, and then he was competing against these other guys. Of course, you know what? The guy that beat him, that he had somehow, I don't know how, who knows, but he had actually made his tires show wear and have like the little marbles that the Formula One cars shoot off their tires, right? And they stick along the side.
Yep.
And he had little sprays of the marbles on the side of the car and everything. And and they take these photos, and you go, wait,
You can't even tell it's a model.
Wait, that's a real car, I think, right?
Yeah.
So, some people are incredibly skilled at the whole spectrum of model building. Some people are fantastic at weathering a model, and what you're talking about is weathering.
Yeah.
Some people are fantastic at weathering. Some people are fantastic at simple assembly. It takes an artist's eye.
I
It really
like
does.
when you see something. Okay, anybody can build a model, but it's when you get creative and with the surroundings and the accessory pieces that make it. Sometimes, you and I have both been to. There used to be a hobby shop on the one-way in Langley. Chris was the guy that ran.
Yeah, Chris
CNC.
Sobey.
Yeah, and he had in his store some displays from a model builder, and that wasn't you, was it?
No.
Oh, but there was an old Model T rotting in a swamp.
Yep.
That was one of the most amazing models I've ever seen. Just the way it was decrepit in there and falling apart, and beautiful, man.
It's the artist's eye again.
Yeah.
I always just considered myself a model builder. Of course, Susan, my wife, she's an artist, and when she's when like my models were always sort of with my ex-wife, they were kind of stuffed off on one side. She didn't want to see the damn things.
This is a collector show. We've had this discussion many times.
Yeah, well, Susan, of course, comes into my life, and she's an artist, and she comes into my house. She goes, "Where are your models?" And I said, "Oh, they're in the room I build my models in." And she's like, "Why?
Why aren't they displayed
why
everywhere?
aren't they out? They're your art. If I'm going to display my art, why aren't you displaying your art?"
We're not going to regulate you to a closet where you can hang your paintings.
Yeah,
or
but,
whatever.
like anything, I'd been sort of conditioned to hide these things away, and here I was living on my own in my own house, and she's like, "Why don't you have your models out?"
Hang on a second here. I have a few women in my life that I want them to meet your wife now.
Oh, hey,
Get a little different train of thought.
I will be the first guy to admit I won the lottery.
Yes, you lucked out. You did very well.
Yes, I certainly did, and it's luck. Trust me, it's not good looks. But
Brian,
Well, again, selling yourself short?
what is your favorite, like, what type of models do you like to build? What's your favorite?
that's an interesting. That's like saying, what is your favorite food?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk about what you like to eat that's baked or fried or roasted?
So many categories.
I am an eclectic model builder. I build aircraft, armor, cars.
Yeah.
My favorite models depends on the week.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I wish I could give you a specific answer, but it really depends. Sometimes it depends on the book I'm reading.
We talked to a guy a while ago on our show that was a massive collector of many, many things, and he had a huge car collection. And we asked him what his favorite car was, and he had the greatest answer. He said, "My next one."
That's a really good answer, and that would be my answer.
It's what gets you
to
excited and gets you up in the morning. Oh, I'm going to build this tank or whatever it might be.
Absolutely,
That's where your brain is.
Absolutely, and sometimes you'll lose interest in the middle of a model. You put it in the box, put it on the shelf. I just last week finished one that I'd started 10 years ago.
Oh, I know that story.
Because it just suddenly, I saw it sitting in the box and I went, wow. And I was just in the right frame of mind. I put her on the table and
Ding.
got working
Time
on
to
it
get
again.
back to it.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny, eh? So it shows you that it's timeless almost. It's the mood. There's got to be a lot of magic kind of happening.
Yeah. Well, I look back at when you guys asked me about when I started building models. The reason I started building models was our next door neighbor was a German fellow, and him and his wife were just the salt of the earth. They were just the most wonderful people. And this is 1965, 1966, and he knew it was my birthday, and he showed up with an Aurora 148 scale Focke-Wulf 190.
Oh.
Now, a Focke-Wulf is a plane, isn't it?
Yeah. He showed up at the door, and he said to my mother, he said, I know it is Bryant's birthday, and I got him this because I used to fly one of these.
Wow.
And he sat down at the kitchen table with me and helped me build this thing. Of course, I held it together, and he did the gluing because he was quite a precise individual. But he helped me build it because my father was, while a great man, was useless when it came to anything like that. But he sat at the table and he told me about flying this plane, and once the wings were on it, we did the with it, and I can remember. I'm 61 years old, and I can remember that like yesterday.
Nice.
Wow.
And as far as the taking the airplane and going with it, on Facebook discussion groups, there's always the question. There's often the question comes up. Does anybody do the
And
I always say there's two kinds of modelers. There's those that admit they hand fly their airplane models around the room, and they're liars.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with the cars, I mean, who hasn't put the car together and gone boom, 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 boom.
Oh, of course. The sound effects are a big part of it.
Oh God, yeah.
I was going to say, with your attention to detail, obviously a modeler has to have that. And the amount of military stuff you've built over the years has really upped your military knowledge game, hasn't it?
Well, it sort of goes hand in glove. My military knowledge goes to increases my interest in the military vehicles.
They feed each other. Gotcha.
Yeah. They live off each other.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm out collecting and I come across a piece of vintage military stuff, this man is the guy that I often message and ask, "What do you think of this?" and you go, oh, that's blah 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 blah, like you had it ready, you had the question, the answer ready, and it impresses me constantly. But it just shows that you're a man that it pays attention to what he's doing.
So, Brian, in your collection of armored stuff, do you have a tiger tank? You must.
Do I have a
Several.
tiger? Do I have a tiger tank? No, I have. Are you talking about the Tiger 1, the Tiger 2, or the proposed Tiger 3 that didn't make it into production? But
that's the one I would be interested in seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. We called them paper panzers.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were only ever designed, but there's a lot of companies now that are actually producing the what ifs.
Yeah. Oh,
cool.
wow.
And those are the, I talk to other modelers, and I've known some modelers who are real purists. We call them rivet counters.
The guys,
yeah.
it's got to be
exact, and well, I'm not a rivet counter. I'm like, this particular aircraft, I like it, but I think it would look better this way. And that's the great thing about model building. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a little plastic thing that you've bought and put together, and you can do it any way you want. And I love them because nobody can tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
No.
You paint it any way you want. Nobody can tell you you're wrong.
Sure.
So yeah, tigers, you betcha. I'll tell you, my favorite is the panther.
You would have been able to answer a Jeopardy question I saw some months ago. It was I can't remember what the category was, foreign language or something like, or it was animals, and they say that people in Mexico would call this certain animal by its German name, which was Panzerschwein, and
oh, okay, Panzerschwein would be armored pig.
Yeah.
So probably a warthog or something.
armadillo.
Armadillo. Okay, that makes sense.
Panzerschwein, but yeah, I just thought that's funny. They basically call it a tank pig.
Yeah. Well, Panzer just means armor.
Oh, okay. Does it?
Yeah.
There you go. I'm
Here's
getting educated over here.
another question I got to ask you about. You're saying about the models, or the tanks that didn't exist, but like has anyone produced the Ferdinand Porsche?
The Ferdinand?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because at one point he was sort of in the running for building Germany's tanks, right?
Yeah. You bear in mind something like the American Sherman was built in GM plants. Some of them were built in the Frigidaire plant, like the an appliance Inglis plants.
Okay.
So sometimes aircraft like the B-24 and stuff like that were built in other plants.
Yeah.
And so as far as Porsche goes, he designed the Ferdinand.
But did that tank never see?
It did actually.
Oh, it did.
Didn't it have two engines? Or wasn't it some weird? There was.
Yeah, it was a fixed forward-firing gun. It didn't have a turret, but the engine was ahead of the fighting compartment.
Yeah.
Rather than at that time, most of the tanks had the engine behind the fighting compartment. Yeah. But it was a very unique design.
See, this is what I was talking about, though. Your attention to detail in model building has made you could go on about tanks. It's cool that you learn so much while you're, and it's a lesson to those listening that are thinking about getting into model building. Get ready to be Get ready to be educated, because you can't do something without learning about it.
But at the same time, like I remember my kids, they never really got seriously into model building. But when they tried it as kids, of course, I remember them, built a P-51 Mustang and did it with, green with blue dots on it. And, that was what they wanted to build. And they never really got into it. But, if you want to build a model car and paint the whole damn thing purple, it's your money. You bought it.
I got a quick story for you. Me and a friend growing up, we were about 9 or 10 years old, something like that, took all his old model kits, spare pieces, the trees themselves, all these different parts, and we built our own custom whatchamacallit.
Sure.
It was just everything bolted together. It was like an interior bucket, looked like a tea bucket, and it had smokestacks and dually rear wheels. And
well, when I was young, you could still buy firecrackers.
Oh yeah.
And there was hundreds of models of mine that were built and blown up.
Well,
and then I got a pellet gun.
As
and
a
that-
fire chief, you no longer condone that sort of behavior.
I certainly don't condone fireworks. No.
No, okay. But everybody has
Sure.
used them at some point in their life.
Sure, Bryant.
It's a necessary part of growing up, isn't it? It's part of your past.
I take the fifth.
Okay,
I'm still employed as a firefighter, and I'm
fair
not
enough.
going to do anything but say fireworks are bad. Stay in school, kids. Don't do drugs.
Very good advice. So yeah, about this time of the interview is kind of when we like to ask people. Obviously, you're a specialty collector in models and such, but is there anything else in the world that you collect?
Certainly nothing to the extent that I collect models.
Of course, that's your number one.
Yeah, it's my obsession, and my addiction, and my major failing in life.
There's no help for it either.
There really isn't. There really isn't.
There's no association.
Books. I'm an avid reader. So books, magazines about models, magazines about aircraft, military stuff like that.
So you probably read a lot of true military history and
I read a lot of military history, but at the same time, I'm more interested in novels.
Oh, okay.
I read trash.
Oh, do you? Well, we've all got our secret little vices, you know. Some people watch soap operas, some read trashy novels.
But yeah, I like to. I do a bit of woodworking, that sort of thing.
You've got hobbies.
I got hobbies, but this is since I was 5, this is basically in my DNA.
Speaking of hobbies, you go into a hobby store. What's the main number one thing in there? Bottles.
Yeah, exactly. Not once I get out of it, though.
No, you're
But
good at it.
like yourself, I'm also an avid motorcyclist, and
yes.
So
well, that's what makes you such a cool guy. We know that.
Yeah.
Mike is a guy that we've ridden handlebar to handlebar many, many miles. So we get you there. Anyway, you've taught us a ton about models that I didn't know. You've taught us all sorts of things today. We are always here to educate our audience, both educate and be educated. And that's what's happened here. So we really appreciate you coming down. Ladies and gentlemen, Bryant Ross, Fire Chief and Model Builder Extraordinaire. Give him a hand, yay!
Thanks for being here, Brian.
Model builder ordinary.
Yes, there you go. We'll be back right after the break. Thank you. And we're back. Hey, that was Bryant Ross. He was an interesting guy to have on, wasn't he?
That guy knows a lot.
You guys, I bet you two could sit there and talk for hours when you guys get into tanks and military and the history of World War II and whatnot.
I think he is a guy that I'm probably going to have to invite him and his wife out onto my boat one Sunday out at Harrison.
He'd probably like that.
I wonder if he's a beer drinker. Can I ask him?
Not much of a drinker, really, Bryant isn't. No, but that's
Well, if he's a coffee drinker, that's good.
Oh, he drinks coffee, I believe.
And soda?
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's a very knowledgeable guy. I've known him for years.
Man,
and I just love his model collection. I've been to his house before, and he's got so many. We kind of went long in the interview, so we're going to jump right to our trivia question. I believe Aiden, our producer, has a trivia question today. Or did you send it to Michael?
Oh, did you want me to do? I can do the trivia question.
Well, you can ask it. Michael can
Yeah,
look
we'll
at
let
it.
you ask it.
Michael can look at his phone later for the listener question, but we'll let you ask.
And when was the first available or first like commercially sold model? Like that you could buy model kit that you could buy in a retail store.
Now, my mind is going back to the 50s and whatnot, but you know what? Plastic has only been around for so long. Commercially available. Because I do know this. I've been to the Vancouver Maritime Museum, and on the St. Rock, they have some displays, or in the museum at any rate, of ships that were built by prisoners out of bone, made out of their dinner bones. And they're just amazing models. But those are hand-built. So commercially available, I'm going to guess it would have been a ship as well back in the day. I'm going to say there was some ship models sold to children.
Are we talking plastic model kit?
Yes.
Oh, plastic? Well, then I'm going to change my answer.
Okay.
All right.
53 Corvette. The first Corvette that came out.
And the year 53?
Yeah, that's just my
And
guess.
I'm going
Because that's right around when plastic started.
I'm going to say 49. 1949, and it was
car or a
was
plane or
a model of a ship, military. Don't know what.
Who's closest? Who's right? Nobody's right, are they?
It's 1936.
Ooh.
It's manufactured by, I'm not really sure what it is, to be honest. It looks like a plane to me. It's it's a frog. It says penguin, but it looks like a Catalina flying boat to me.
Oh,
or
okay.
possibly
So
a
boat-
biplane.
Oh, flying boat. So yeah, I win.
Okay. There you go. Well, yeah, he wins. He wins everything. No, that's interesting.
Yeah, that
Cool.
is interesting. I wouldn't have thought it was that early, but
No,
wow.
I wouldn't have either, especially with plastic.
Yeah,
Well, they
that's
had
cool.
like Bakelite back then, but plastic was in its infancy. So, yeah, cool. Interesting. Like I said, we're always learning something new here.
Every time.
And last but not least, did we have a listener question?
We did.
Ah,
Mr. Bloski has it.
Oh,
okay. We always like to remind our listenership to write us anytime they want at feedback@thecollectorscast.com with their questions, queries, or comments. We love to hear from you.
This one's a doozy.
A doozy.
Oh.
This one's a doozy.
our question comes from Bryant from Langley, BC.
Oh, well, I remember that guy.
I remember that guy.
He left a question before
And he
left,
asks,
okay.
what was your first model?
Ooh, I do know the answer to that.
Yeah, I
I'm
know
trying to
mine was.
remember. My first, I believe, was a Model T. Either a Revell or an AMT Model T that I would have got sometime in the early 70s. And yes, I was too young to build it. But I did not a bad job. I painted it all with a brush, no spray paint back then. And I did it in a dark blue color. Even though Henry used to sell them, he said you'd have any color you wanted as long as it was black. Henry Ford we're talking about. I painted mine in a dark blue, and I loved it. It was like a dark metallic blue, one of my favorite things. What was yours?
My first model was a model of the British battleship, the Hood.
The Hood.
I think it wasn't a battleship. It was a heavy cruiser.
Oh,
I
okay.
think the
Well,
Hood,
hey.
because was the Hood not, I believe the
We
Hood.
have something in common there. The slight coincidence, because I grew up in the Hood.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
there's your answer. Thanks, Bryant and Langley, wherever you are, for that question. We always like hearing from our listenership. So, speaking of ships, and I don't think there's much left to say other than
I
this
think
has
that's
been the
what-
Collector's Cast. He's been Mike. I've been Clint. We've enjoyed having you here.
See you soon.
See you soon. Good night.